It's 1983, you're 8 years old, and your mum sends you to the corner shop to buy her cigarettes. On the way back, you accept a lift from a neighbour you barely know, arrive home without a seatbelt on, and nobody thinks twice about any of it. Today, every single one of those actions would trigger safeguarding alerts, police investigations, and probably social services. We're diving into 12 everyday things kids did in the 1980s that are no longer safe in today's UK. Not because we were reckless, but because the world has fundamentally changed around us. Riding in cars without seatbelts. Let's start with something that'll make modern parents hyperventilate. In the 1980s, seatbelts were optional for children, and we treated cars like mobile playgrounds. You'd lie across the back seat during long journeys, stand up through the sunroof to wave at other cars, or sit on your dad's lap while he drove around the estate. The back of the car was our kingdom. We'd roll around freely during turns, play games across the seats, and think nothing of sticking our heads out of windows at 60 miles per hour. Some cars didn't even have rear seatbelts fitted. They were considered unnecessary for children. Family road trips were chaos. Kids would climb over seats, fight for window spots, and treat the car interior like a jungle gym. Parents would reach back to separate squabbling siblings while driving, one hand on the wheel, cigarette in the other. Can you imagine letting your child travel like this today? The very thought probably makes you reach for your phone to check your dashcam footage. We've gained safety, but we've lost that sense of the car as an extension of home, a place where families could be genuinely relaxed and carefree. The shift wasn't just about safety regulations, it was about a fundamental change in how we perceive risk and responsibility. Back then, accidents were just that, accidents. Now every injury needs someone to blame. What's your most vivid memory of traveling in a car without a seatbelt? Walking anywhere alone after dark. Here's something that'll shock modern parents. In the 1980s, children regularly walked home alone in the dark, and nobody called the police. You'd spend the evening at a friend's house and walk home at 9 or 10 p.m., aged just 8 or 9, through streets that were genuinely safer than today. The contrast with modern Britain is stark. Back then, the biggest danger was tripping over a curb or getting caught in the rain. Today, those same streets might have all sorts of danger, mostly coming from people. What was once normal childhood independence is now genuinely risky behavior. We'd walk through parks, down alleyways, across wasteland, routes that would terrify parents today. The community was different too. Adults would nod hello to lone children, shopkeepers would recognize local kids, and there was an unspoken understanding that everyone looked out for everyone else's children. Street lighting was dimmer, there were fewer cars, and the night felt safer somehow. You'd hear your footsteps echoing, see lights in house windows, and feel part of a community that was settling down for the evening. It was peaceful, not threatening. Try explaining to a modern parent that their 9-year-old should walk home alone at 10 p.m. They'd think you were insane, and in today's Britain, they'd probably be right. We haven't become more paranoid, the streets have genuinely become more dangerous. The saddest part? We've lost that childhood confidence, that sense that the world is fundamentally safe and welcoming. Today's children grow up knowing the streets can be hostile territory. How old were you when you first walked home alone in the dark? Being sent to buy cigarettes and alcohol. Here's one that would trigger a police investigation today. In 1980s Britain, children regularly bought cigarettes and alcohol for their parents, armed with nothing more than a handwritten note and exact change. Corner shops would serve 8-year-olds without question, trusting the system completely. 20 Embassy Regal and a bottle of milk for Mrs. Thompson. That note was your passport to adult purchases. Shopkeepers knew every family in the neighborhood, recognized the handwriting, and never questioned a child's legitimacy. It was a system built on trust and community knowledge. You'd walk into the shop, hand over the note, and watch as the shopkeeper gathered your items without hesitation. Sometimes they'd even let you choose your own sweets as a reward for being helpful. The transaction was simple, human, and based on relationships rather than regulations. The contrast with today is extraordinary. Modern shop assistants would call social services if a child tried to buy cigarettes, regardless of any note. The very idea seems like child abuse now, but back then it was just being helpful to your parents. What's changed isn't just the law, it's the entire social fabric. We've moved from a society based on trust and community knowledge to one based on suspicion and regulation. Every transaction is now anonymous, monitored, and governed by strict rules rather than human judgment. The corner shops knew this too. They were unofficial guardians of childhood, teaching kids about money, responsibility, and social interaction. When the big supermarkets killed these local shops, they took with them an entire system of community-based trust. What was the first adult thing you bought for your parents? Experiencing school discipline that's now illegal. Here's something that'll shock younger viewers. Until 1986, teachers in British state schools could legally use physical punishment on children. What was once considered normal discipline is now classified as assault, and the change happened within living memory. The system was formal and ritualized. Teachers had specific implements, there were rules about when and how punishment could be administered, and parents generally supported it. It wasn't random violence, it was an accepted part of the educational system that everyone understood and expected. The psychological impact was enormous. Children lived with the constant awareness that misbehavior had immediate physical consequences. Classroom discipline was maintained through a combination of respect, fear, and clear boundaries that everyone understood. What's fascinating is how quickly this disappeared from collective memory. By the 1990s, the very idea seemed barbaric. Teachers who had once wielded authority through physical discipline had to completely reinvent their classroom management techniques. The contrast with today's schools is remarkable. Modern teachers face challenging behavior with nothing but words, detentions, and phone calls home. Some argue this has led to a breakdown in classroom discipline. Others say it's created more respectful, understanding relationships between teachers and pupils. The change reflects a broader shift in how we view children, from small adults who needed firm correction to developing individuals who deserve protection and understanding. Whether this has made schools better or worse depends on your perspective. Do you remember the last time you witnessed this kind of school discipline? Cycling without any safety equipment. In 1980s Britain, the idea of wearing a helmet while cycling was laughable. Children rode bikes everywhere, busy main roads, country lanes, through town centres, with nothing more protective than their school uniform and a prayer. We'd cycle to school along A roads, weaving between lorries and buses without a second thought. No helmets, no reflective clothing, no lights after dark, just a bike and the assumption that everyone would look out for each other. The roads felt safer because there were fewer cars and drivers were more patient with cyclists. BMX bikes were the ultimate freedom machine. We'd build jumps, race through woods, and attempt stunts that would horrify modern parents. Falling off was part of the experience. You'd dust yourself off, check your bike wasn't broken, and carry on. Injuries were badges of honor, not reasons for lawsuits. The cycling culture was completely different too. Bikes were tools of independence, not lifestyle statements. You didn't need special clothes, expensive equipment, or safety courses. You just got on and rode. Every child could fix a puncture, adjust their brakes, and navigate by instinct rather than GPS. Try letting your child cycle to school today without a helmet, and you'll face criticism from other parents, teachers, and possibly the police. We've gained safety awareness but lost that casual relationship with risk that made cycling feel like flying. The roads have changed too. More traffic, faster speeds, and drivers who see cyclists as obstacles rather than fellow road users. What was once safe childhood independence is now genuinely dangerous behavior. What was your first bike and where did you ride it? Playing in genuinely dangerous places. Every 1980s childhood had its forbidden playground, the building site, the railway embankment, the abandoned factory, or the quarry. These weren't official play areas. They were adventures waiting to happen, and we explored them all without adult supervision or safety equipment. Building sites were treasure troves of imagination. Half-built houses became castles, concrete pipes became tunnels, and scaffolding became climbing frames. We'd play hide and seek among the machinery, build dens from leftover materials, and create elaborate games that lasted for hours. The railway was the ultimate adventure. We'd walk along disused tracks, balance on rails, and explore abandoned stations. Some lines were still active, which added genuine danger to the thrill. The sound of an approaching train would send us scrambling up embankments, hearts racing with excitement and fear. Quarries and gravel pits were our swimming pools and adventure parks. We'd jump from dangerous heights into water of unknown depth, explore underwater caves, and build rafts from whatever we could find. The danger was real, but so was the sense of achievement when you conquered your fears. Can you imagine children having access to these places today? Health and safety regulations, insurance concerns, and genuine increases in urban danger have locked away these spaces. Modern playgrounds are safe, supervised, and utterly predictable compared to our concrete jungles and industrial wonderlands. We learned risk assessment through experience, developed physical confidence through challenge, and created memories that no amount of organized activities could match. The price was occasional injury, but the reward was genuine adventure. What was the most dangerous place you played as a child? Using playground equipment that could actually hurt you. School playgrounds in the 1980s were basically accident waiting to happen, and we loved every dangerous minute of it. The equipment was built from metal and concrete, designed for durability rather than safety, and capable of inflicting serious injury on the unwary. The slides were monuments to danger, 15 feet of burning metal in summer, slippery death traps in winter. No safety barriers at the top, no soft landing at the bottom, just a straight drop onto concrete or tarmac. Getting to the top required genuine courage, coming down required faith in physics. Roundabouts were spinning wheels of terror that could launch children into orbit if spun fast enough. The goal was always to spin them as fast as possible, then jump on and hold tight while centrifugal force tried to fling you into the nearest wall. Falling off was inevitable. Getting back on was a matter of pride. Seesaws were medieval torture devices disguised as playground equipment. One child could launch another into the stratosphere with a well-timed jump, or trap them in mid-air by suddenly dismounting. The potential for injury was enormous, but so was the fun. Modern playgrounds are marvels of safety engineering, soft surfaces, rounded edges, height restrictions, and equipment designed to prevent rather than enable dangerous behavior. Children are safer, but they're also missing out on the thrill of genuine risk and the satisfaction of conquering real fear. The old playgrounds taught us about physics, risk assessment, and personal responsibility in ways that no safety manual could match. We learned to judge distances, assess dangers, and push our limits through direct experience rather than theoretical instruction. What was the scariest piece of playground equipment at your school? Going on school trips with minimal supervision. School trips in the 1980s were exercises in controlled chaos that would horrify modern health and safety officers. 30 children per teacher, no risk assessments, and activities that would require teams of specialists and insurance waivers today. We'd pile into coaches without seatbelts, driven by chain-smoking drivers who knew every shortcut and weren't afraid to use them. The journey was part of the adventure, singing songs, playing games, and occasionally being sick out of windows that actually opened. Once at our destination, supervision was minimal. Teachers would give a brief safety talk, set a meeting time, and essentially let us loose. We'd explore castles, museums, and historical sites with the kind of freedom that would trigger safeguarding alerts today. The activities were genuinely dangerous too. Rock climbing without proper equipment, swimming in the sea without lifeguards, exploring caves with nothing more than torches and enthusiasm. Teachers were expected to be experts in everything from first aid to mountain rescue, often with no formal training. What made these trips special wasn't just the destinations, it was the independence. We learned to navigate unfamiliar places, make decisions without adult input, and take responsibility for our own safety. The occasional accident was seen as part of the learning experience. Modern school trips require months of planning, detailed risk assessments, and ratios of adults to children that would have been impossible in the 1980s. Children are safer, but they're also more supervised, more restricted, and less likely to experience genuine adventure. The irony is that we probably learned more about the real world on those chaotic, dangerous trips than we ever did in the classroom. What's your most memorable school trip, and what would be impossible about it today? Living with things that are now known to be toxic. Here's something that'll make modern parents reach for the phone to poison control. 1980s children live surrounded by substances that are now known to be genuinely dangerous. Asbestos in school ceilings, lead paint on toys, and chemicals in everything from food coloring to playground equipment. Our school buildings were time bombs of toxic materials, asbestos insulation, lead pipes, and heating systems that pumped out fumes we breathed daily. Nobody knew, nobody tested, and nobody worried. We just got on with learning while slowly poisoning ourselves. The toys were even worse. Chemistry sets contained real chemicals that could cause serious harm. Paint sets used lead-based pigments, and plastic toys were made with substances that are now banned. We'd chew on pencils painted with lead, play with toys that contained toxic plasticizers, and think nothing of it. Even the food was dangerous by today's standards. Artificial colors that are now linked to hyperactivity, preservatives that are banned in many countries, and additives that would horrify modern nutritionists. We consumed E-numbers like they were vitamins and wondered why we were so hyperactive. The contrast with today's obsessive safety culture is remarkable. Modern parents read ingredient lists like scientific papers, research every toy before purchase, and panic over trace amounts of substances that we consumed by the handful. Were we lucky to survive, or are modern parents overprotective? Probably both. We developed robust immune systems and tolerance for risk, but we also suffered health consequences that are only now being understood. The saddest part is that some of the joy went out of childhood, when everything became a potential hazard requiring expert assessment. What's the most dangerous thing you remember playing with as a child? Working as children. In 1980s Britain, children worked and nobody thought it was exploitation. Paper rounds, Saturday jobs, helping in family businesses, child labour was not only legal, but encouraged as character building. The paper round was a rite of passage, getting up at 6 a.m, loading your bag with newspapers heavier than you were, and cycling through dark streets in all weather conditions. You'd navigate by memory, dodge aggressive dogs, and learn the value of money through frozen fingers and aching shoulders. Saturday jobs were even more demanding. Stacking shelves, serving customers, cleaning floors, real work with real responsibilities. Employers expected the same standards from 14-year-olds as they did from adults, and we rose to meet those expectations. Family businesses relied on child labour during holidays and weekends. Farms, shops, market stalls. Children were expected to contribute to the family income from an early age. It wasn't seen as exploitation, but as education in the realities of working life. The contrast with today's child protection laws is stark. Modern children are protected from work until they're 16, with strict regulations about hours, conditions, and types of employment. We've gained protection but lost the early introduction to responsibility and work ethic. Those childhood jobs taught us about punctuality, customer service, and the relationship between effort and reward in ways that no amount of career guidance could match. We learned that money had to be earned, that work could be satisfying, and that responsibility was something to be proud of. The downside was genuine exploitation. Children working in dangerous conditions for minimal pay, missing education, and being treated as cheap labor. But for most of us, those early jobs were formative experiences that shaped our work ethic and understanding of the world. What was your first job, and how old were you when you started? Being completely unreachable for entire days. Here's something that would trigger a missing person report today. In the 1980s, children regularly disappeared for entire days without any way for parents to contact them. No mobile phones, no GPS tracking, no check-ins, just complete freedom and complete trust. You'd leave the house after breakfast with a vague promise to be back for tea and vanish into the neighborhood until hunger or darkness drove you home. Parents had no idea where you were, who you were with, or what you were doing, and they didn't expect to. The psychological freedom was extraordinary. You could change plans without consultation, explore new areas without permission, and make decisions without adult input. If you got lost, you'd ask for directions. If you got hurt, you'd walk home. If you got bored, you'd find something else to do. This wasn't neglect, it was normal parenting. The assumption was that children were capable of looking after themselves, that the community would help if needed, and that independence was more valuable than constant supervision. Can you imagine letting your child disappear for 8 hours today without any contact? The very thought probably makes you check your phone to see where they are right now. We've gained peace of mind but lost the confidence that comes from genuine independence. The streets were different too. More adults were around during the day, neighbors knew each other's children, and there was an informal network of supervision that didn't require formal organization. Everyone looked out for everyone else's kids without being asked. Modern parents live in constant low-level anxiety about their children's whereabouts and safety. We've gained security but lost the trust that made childhood feel like an adventure rather than a supervised activity. What's the longest you went without your parents knowing where you were? Sleeping over anywhere without background checks. Our final example will shock modern safeguarding experts. In the 1980s, children regularly slept at friends' houses, relatives' homes, and family friends' places without any formal checks or concerns. If someone was trusted enough to be in your social circle, they were trusted enough to look after your children overnight. Sleepovers were spontaneous affairs. You'd be playing at a friend's house, it would get late, and someone would suggest you stay the night. A quick phone call to your parents was all the authorization needed. No background checks, no safeguarding policies, no formal arrangements, just trust and community bonds. Extended family networks meant children regularly stayed with aunts, uncles, grandparents, and family friends for days or weeks at a time. Summer holidays were often spent with relatives you barely knew, in houses you'd never visited, with people your parents trusted simply because they were family. The community aspect was crucial. Everyone knew everyone else's business, reputations were built over decades, and social pressure kept people honest. If someone couldn't be trusted with children, the community would know and act accordingly. Try arranging a spontaneous sleepover today. You'll need DBS checks, safeguarding policies, emergency contact forms, and probably a risk assessment. We've gained protection, but lost the spontaneity and trust that made childhood friendships feel like family bonds. The saddest part is that we've created a world where every adult is viewed as a potential threat to children, rather than a potential protector. The village that once raised a child has been replaced by professional services and formal procedures. Modern children miss out on the extended family experience, the sense of belonging to a wider community, and the confidence that comes from being welcomed and cared for by many different adults. Who was the first non-family member you stayed overnight with, and how was it arranged? Growing up in 1980s, Britain meant living with freedoms and risks that seem impossible today. We weren't more reckless, we were living in a different world, with different dangers and different levels of community trust. Some changes have made children genuinely safer, others have wrapped them in cotton wool and robbed them of the independence that shaped our generation. The streets that once felt safe now carry real dangers that our parents never had to consider. We gained safety, supervision, and protection, We lost adventure, independence, and the confidence that comes from navigating the world on your own terms. Which of these freedoms do you miss most? And what would you never let your own children do today? Share your memories in the comments below.